The monks from a local monastery would keep a warning beacon for sailors to warn them of the dangers of shipwreck on the rocky coastline. The landing of the Anglo-Normans in South Wexford. They first landed on Banno, Baginbone and Passage, and these were all visible from Hookhead Lighthouse. They quickly took over much of the south and east of Ireland. Richard de Clare, Earl of Pembroke, otherwise known as Strongbow, he became Lord of Leinster. Strongbow's daughter, Isabella, she married a powerful knight known as William Marshall, and he succeeded Strongbow as Earl of Pembroke and Lord of Leinster. He founded the town of Ross, and he used it as the part of Leinster. In the early 13th century, Marshall began to develop Leinster by bringing in many English tenants, founding towns and buildings and castles. The Tower of Hook was built by Marshall as a landmark and a light tower to guide ships into his part of Ross. The light was provided by a coal-fire beacon back then. Many skilled castle builders were employed by the Pembroke estate. The first historical references to the tower in the records of the Pembroke estate shows that the monks from Churchtown had been installed as custodians. In other words, they were lighthouse keepers or light keepers. They were given 30 acres of land near the tower, which was reserved for the use of for just them as the light keepers, still known to this day actually as the Tower Lands. They now belong to the Loftus Hall, and the monks presumably continued their custodians for several centuries, probably until the dissolution of the monasteries by King Henry VIII in 1540, and by the 17th century the light was no longer tended, and numerous shipwrecks led to the calls from sailors and merchants for the lighthouse to be restored. Hook Tower, along with 5 others along the coast, they were restored by a man called Robert Readinge. He erected the first glass lantern to protect the coal-fire beacon from the elements. Further improvements were carried out in the early 1700s. In the late 1600s, the tower passed into the possession of the Loftus family, otherwise known as the Loftus Hall. Everyone knows that one. In 1706, Henry Loftus, he leased the tower to the authorities for £11 per annum. The ground floor was used as a coal store, but later it was used for the military as a magazine to store gunpowder. Following repeated complaints by mariners about the poor condition of the light, the coal fire was eventually replaced in 1791 by a lamp burning whale oil. In this year, the tower was handed over to the corporation for preservation and improving the port, and £4,280 was spent on a new apparatus. In this year, the lantern was given its present shape. 3 dwellings were built for the lighthouse keepers, otherwise known as the light keepers, and their families. 3 red bands were painted onto the tower. These were later changed to black, and then the bands were reduced to 2, as you see today. There's only the 2 black bands on it. New gas lights were installed in this year, powered by gas manufactured in the gas yard. Paraffin oil subsequently became the source of power. A clockwise mechanism was installed to change the beacon from a fixed to a flashing light. The mechanism had to be wound up every 25 minutes. And in 1972, the light switched over to electricity. Imagine that, 1972. The lighthouse was automated, and the light keepers departed after almost 800 years. Imagine that, after 800 years. In 1996, the boys walked out the door, and that was it. It was all automatic then. As well as the light, the fog signal is operated at the lighthouse. For centuries, a cannon gun was fired off the edge of the cliff during fog. This was replaced by a hooter, which in turn was replaced by rockets, and in 1972 a foghorn worked by compressed air was installed. So we're up to 2011. The foghorn was decommissioned in January of 2011. And that brings us to the end of the story, folks. It basically goes that this is an 800-year-old lighthouse that still serves its function, and it's now the oldest intact operational lighthouse in the world. And it's proud to say it's Irish and it's on our island.